Today we're going to be taking a look at the new Voltara ESCs designed by LiveU for use with not only KISS Ultra but also Betaflight as well. Now what's really interesting about these ESCs is that they are not just another piece of hardware designed to use AM32 or anything else. This is an entire in-house hardware and software design that hopefully gives you options in the void that's now been created as a result of BL Heli 32 ending. Now what we're going to do today is give you an overview of the two different ESCs, because we've now got a 70 amp as well as a 20 by 20 50 amp. Walk you through how it works, not only with KISS Ultra, but I will talk about Betaflight as well. And then at the very end, I'm going to share with you some thoughts having spent some time with them. Now, just to be crystal clear before I get into it, I was sent over the ESCs and the KISS Ultras to try. I have not paid for these, though I've not been paid to make this video. This video is not sponsored. There is no affiliate income here. And as always, my thoughts are entirely my own. Now in this video, we're going to be concentrating on the ESCs themselves, the Voltara 70 amp full size, as well as the new Voltara Mini 50 amp. Before we do that though, I just want to mention compatibility, because whilst these ESCs are specifically designed to work with KISS Ultra, whether it be the full size or the Mini, you can also use them with Betaflight as well. There are some really nice configuration options when using these with KISS Ultra, and I will talk about that later on in the video, but you can use them with Betaflight, so don't worry, they are not specifically for KISS. These are an ESC that you can use with any of the flight stacks. They are basically pre-configured to work out of the box, and they will offer you great performance no matter what flight stack you choose. Now to start, we're going to take a look at the full-size 70 amp ESC, and then we're going to move over to the Mini. Now to take a look at the ESC, first of all, in the kit you will find the ESC itself in this anti-static bag, which we'll come on to in a second, and then you will also find a little bag with our wiring harness for our flight controller as well as a capacitor. The capacitor that they've included is a 35 volt 1000 UF, and as I have mentioned already, this harness is pin compatible with the KISS Ultra series of flight controllers, but you don't have to use KISS. You can use others if you want to, but you may need to repin this out, so do make sure you check that before powering it up. Now, looking at the ESC, the first thing you'll notice is it does look pretty much like any other ESC out there. We've got our battery pads, our inputs from our flight controller, our motor pads on the side, some FETs, as well as some other stuff over this side here. Now, the ESC itself is rated at 70 amp, but they do say capable of up to 80. It features a 3 to 8S voltage input. It has an M3 30.5 by 30.5 mounting pattern, and size-wise they say it's 40 by 39 or 40 by 42.8 with the wings. Now the ESC does come with a nano hydrophobic coating installed as standard, and you can see that over the board there when I shine it under the light. Now input-wise, this ESC is pin compatible with the KISS Ultra series, but don't worry, you can use it with Betaflight as well. It supports D-Shot 150, 300, 600, 1200 and 2400, and it's actually recommended to be used with D-Shot 2400 as standard. Telemetry-wise, it supports voltage, current, temperature, RPM and milliamp hour used, and it's compatible with any flight controller that supports D-Shot signals. Now, looking around the board on this side here, you can see we've got MCUs and motor drivers in the middle, and then you have your FETs going all the way around. We'll take a closer look at it under the microscope in a minute, but what it appears to be is we've got an MCU and a motor driver there, MCU and motor driver there, and then if we flip it over to the other side, yeah, we've got the same layout underneath, MCU motor driver, MCU motor driver. Now, looking under this side of the board, you will notice something rather interesting, and this is these white components here. And these are current sensing shunt resistors, because each of the ESCs on this has its own current sensor. That means it's able to actually individually measure the current each ESC is using, and that not only offers additional performance, but it offers additional protection as well, because it can actually detect an individual ESC if it gets shorted. Now, when using this ESC with a KISS Ultra flight controller, you do have a lot of nice options available. So for instance, you have current and temperature limits, ramp up power, voltage and current calibration, slow start, so spin up, rotation direction, beeper volume and beacon time. Some of these are going to be coming to Betaflight in the future, but overall, this ESC is designed to be plug and play out the door. If you're using it with KISS Ultra, you do have the ability to configure it via the KISS Ultra configurator, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Now, just looking around the rest of the board, you can see we've got our motor pads here only on one side. So the pads are located down there and down there. There's no castellation on this, again, because there is no pad underneath. The FETs on the bottom come right out to the edge, whereas on the motor pads on the top, you have some space with the FETs set back, but there's no need for anything like castellation there. However, don't worry, they have castellated the main battery input pads over here, and you can even see that there's wires on them too. Now, with regards to connecting to the flight controller, it has our standard connector there, but you do have pads as well if you want to manually wire to it. Now, with regards to using this in a stack, you can see here we've got the KISS Ultra version 2 on the top. You are going to need some standoffs between the Ultra and the ESC just to make sure you've got a bit of spacing there. About the only thing you do want to watch is your USB port down here, just to make sure that if you do mount it this way, that you don't get it too close to the battery input pad wires. You're going to want to make sure that you do have enough separation between the boards, just to make sure that nothing horrible can go wrong. Next, moving over to the Voltara Mini. Now, this is the new 20x20 mounting pattern version of the Voltara ESC. Yes, it has a lower rating, but it does have many of the same features and specs that we find on the full-size 70 amp one. Now, spec-wise, it is 37 by 33 mil or 37 by 37 mil, including the wings. It weighs 12 grams. It has M3 20 by 20 mounting pattern, and it is rated at 60 amp max, 4x60, obviously because it is an individual, but they do specify it as a 50 amp continuous. Like the full-size ESC, you can see it has a hydrophobic coating on board. You can see that as I move it there under the light. It supports D-Shot 150, 300, 600, 1200 and 2400. It supports the full voltage and telemetry. It's fully plug and play with KISS Ultra, and again has all the same features with regards to the configuration as you find on the full-size ESC. Now, looking around it, you can see we have our ESC pads down there on the top, and if I flip it over, it is the same. There are none underneath, so you're not going to have any castellation on that. It's just the edge of the board. It's just the pad there. Then down here, we have our main battery inputs. These are castellated though, which is nice to see. And then up this side here, we have our main motor input, and then that is padded out underneath. Like the big ESC, you can see that it still has the shunt resistors for current measurement. They've just separated things across both sides of the board now. So you've got your controller and your motor driver on one side. You've got two here, and then you've got your controller and motor driver and two on the other side. You've got a back over there, some filtering for some capacitors, and that's pretty much it. Now, in the box, just like the full size, I'm not going to open this one, you get a capacitor and you get your wiring harness as well. Again, pre-wired for KISS Ultra, but you can use it with any ESC, Betaflight or anything else. Just make sure though, before you do make sure that your pin out for your connector is correct. Now, as I have said, this new mini version is designed to be used with the KISS Ultra Mini, but you can use it with any other flight controller. The KISS Ultra Mini is so small, it's incredible. I am going to be talking about this in a separate video in the near future, but this is directly pin compatible with the wiring harness, and again, 20x20 mount. So this is able to create a small stack just like that once you've got the spaces in there. Again, you're going to have to just watch for anything hanging down, but other than that, it makes a really nice compact 20x20 stack solution for your 3-inch, 3.5-inch, 4-inch. You could even put it in a lightweight 5-inch as well if you wanted to. Now, when it comes to firmware, these ESCs are not running any of the usual suspects, such as BL Heli, AM32, or the others. These have their own custom firmware completely developed in-house by the team. Now, that firmware is 32-bit, running on STM32 microcontrollers. What's really nice about the fact that they control the hardware and the firmware is that they get to do some nice things, and one of them is the ability to fully monitor each of the motor outputs. As I mentioned earlier, they have individual shunt resistors on each motor output, and what that means is if you were to have, say, a short on just one motor, so the motor was jammed or it had failed, the ESC could be drawing a huge amount of current, but they can tell which motor that is. On a normal ESC that has a single shunt resistor on the input, all the firmware will see is that there is a huge amount of draw and it would have to shut the whole ESC down or ignore it and basically burn it out, whereas this can monitor each of the motor outputs and it can actually go, oh, it is that specific motor that is causing the issue, cut the power. As a result of this, it gives you additional protection mechanisms in the firmware that really should help against issues such as crashes burning out your ESC. Now, as I've mentioned already, there's no specific need to configure anything on these ESCs out the box. However, if you did want to do it when using it with KISS Ultra, there are actually two different ways. You can do it with the KISS UI, but you can also have full control over the ESC via the KISS Ultra OSD system as well. Now, the configuration via the UI is simply done via pass-through from the flight controller. Now, this build is the low flow frame that is available from KISS as well. This is the version 4. I'm actually going to have a separate video on this in the near future. This is built up with the Voltara ESC as well as a KISS Ultra on board, and I'm going to be talking about them in a separate video as well. I'll link to them in the description if they're already published at the point of this one going live. To do the configuration, we're simply going to plug in our USB connection to our KISS Ultra. We're going to go to kiss-ultra.com and we're going to connect to our flight controller. Once connected, you will see over here on the end, there is an option called ESC Flasher. And as long as you've got the ESC powered up, please do make sure you have removed any props that you've got fitted at this time, and then you agree that you know what you're doing. Then you will see some information for our ESC over here. We've got each of the ESC shown with their current version and serial numbers, and then we've got some basic settings such as reverse direction and 3D mode options. Now, whilst there are only limited options available via the KISS Ultra GUI, via the OSD you have full access to everything. Now, if I go into the OSD menu in here, you can see there is a dedicated setting for Voltara setup. You can see that at the bottom. We can then go up to that, and within here it will then scan for all of the ESCs, and you can then go into each one individually, and this then will bring up all of the options that are available for the ESC. So you've got options such as slow start, spin up, ramp up power, rotation direction, current limit, temperature limit, voltage calibration, current calibration, beeper volume and beacon time. Now, this is all available via the KISS Ultra OSD as you see here, and as I've said, you can configure each of these ESCs individually, choose the one you want, and it just gives you a really nice and simple setup. And the great thing about the whole KISS ecosystem is that you don't actually have to use a GUI configurator at all. You can do everything you need to do via the KISS OSD system. You have your full setup for the Ultra available under here as well. You have your full setup for your PIDs, your setup for your rates. Everything is here. So again, it's just another nice feature that you get when using this with the KISS system. Okay, now just take a look at the ESC's build and some of the components under the microscope. Now, looking at the pads first of all, you can see, as I've said, the main battery pad on this is castellated down there. There are wires that you can see under the copper foil on the top. You can see the little bumps there. You can see the little bumps all the way down there. There are no pads on the back of these ESCs, so there's nothing for it to go all the way through on. I did mention this on the TBS ESC, so I should mention it here as well. I would like to see sort of wires protrude through to the top, but again, it's a very minor thing, and there's no signs of any issues on these with pads lifting or anything like that. I have seen a single report of pads lifting on the TBS Lucid ESC, but it isn't clear if that was a build quality issue or if that was just simply an overheating the pad issue, because remember, all of this is actually glued on. All of the layers of the PCB are glued together, so you still have to be careful when applying heat. Looking around the components, you can see we've got our FETs down the sides there. You can see the routing for the outside pad goes around the outside hole there, but that is absolutely fine. If we just pop off one of the isolators just to have a look at how the hole is. There, you can see that now in a bit more detail. So there is the copper trace that goes around, and then there is like a separation area, and you can see that there's no copper going down through the hole. Absolutely fine. If we then look around the board, you can see the component layout. Everything looks clean and tidy. No sign of tombstoning. Everything looks nice and square on its pad. You're going to see some reflections on this as a result of that coating that's on the ESC as well. So obviously it will make it a little bit more difficult to show you things. With regards to what the FETs actually are, you can see that they are HAS201s or the 07N04 NM6s. With regards to the microcontrollers, these are STM32L series L431s, 32-bit microcontroller running at 80 megahertz. You can then see our motor driver chips. If I just spin that around, you can see that the motor driver is there, and the number on that is DRV83288. And obviously the way the board layout is, you've got 2 on this side here. And then if I flip it over, we've got 2 on this side here. Now up here, we've got our pads for soldering on if we want to, rather than using our header connector. And then about the last thing I just want to show you is those shunt resistors for current measurement. So you can see they're located here. So the current comes in through the resistors into the FETs, an individual resistor for each of the ESCs, which is going to allow additional control over the ESC. Moving over to the Mini. Now, everything here is very similar. We do have different FETs, of course. So if we just take a look at them, they are labeled as 01304L6s, but we've got the same microcontrollers and we've got the same motor drivers as well. Again, the board layout on this one is a little bit different. So you can see over here, we've got a FET on the corner here for the corner pad, rather than it going around our hole. We've got a line of capacitors along the back there. And then if we flip it over to this side, again, exactly the same. Individual shunt resistors on each FET series. So 3 there, 3 there, shunt resistor. So again, it's able to detect the current draw for each of the independent ESCs. Now, I have been testing the 70 amp ESC in the low flow frame, which they also make. This build has a full-size KISS Ultra on board with the Voltara at the bottom. I've actually got it mounted side on. I showed you all of that in the frame build video. I'll talk about my thoughts having spent some time flying this in a minute. Overall though, no major complaints. With regards to building this ESC in, it's pretty much the same as any other ESC out there. No particular difficulty at all. I've had enough flight time on it that I'm fairly comfortable with how it flies and things like that. Okay, now to share with you my thoughts on the Voltara ESCs. Now, at this point, I've only flown the 70 amp. I've not flown the 50. That literally has just come in, but I'm not expecting any great changes between the 50 and the 70 amp with regards to flight characteristics. Same firmware, just different current carrying capacity. Overall, I've had a reasonable amount of flight time, not a huge amount, but I've certainly had enough to sort of weed out any issues, and basically, they are great. No issues, they fly great. It literally feels as good as any other ESC that I've flown. I have zero complaints. These absolutely, for me, make a very nice drop-in replacement for what we had with BL Heli 32. I've had no complaints, no issues. It just works. And when you're talking about ESCs, there are going to be people who have different opinions. People are going to be testing them in much bigger rigs, much smaller rigs. You're going to be talking whoops. You're going to be talking 7, 8, 10-inch quads. I've been testing this in a 5-inch and in a generic 5-inch freestyle build with KISS Ultra. It flies absolutely fine. I also have a Betaflight build, and again, it flies okay. No complaints, just nothing to complain about at all. And I'm not sort of playing down how it performs. It does exactly what I expect an ESC to do, and that is actually high praise, because today we have a void that is BL Heli 32 is no more. AM32 is great, but still needs some development. But this is absolutely an option if you're looking to try something different. Now, what I really like about this, and this stuff is more dedicated to the KISS Ultra side of things, the fact that you can configure it through the OSD, lots of nice options there. I'd like to see Betaflight configuration. I think that's coming in the future. Here and now, that is only available through the KISS Ultra, but you don't need to configure it. It just works out of the box anyway, so you really don't have to worry. You can just plug this ESC in with your quad and it's going to do exactly what you expect it to. Now, if you're interested in getting these, there will be links to them in the description. The Voltara website has links to retailers where you can buy these ESCs. So for instance, they're available directly via the KISS Ultra store. They have them both listed here, both the full size 70 amp as well as the mini, both available for €80, although the full size is currently sold out, but I'm sure it'll be back in stock shortly. There is also links on their website to TBS as well as Pyro Drone. Both of them are retailers where you can purchase these ESCs too, and I'm sure you may see them turn up in other retailers in the future as well. It's great to see another manufacturer get on board with ESCs, some nice new features, things like that individual current sensing, things like that custom software, and I'm pleased that we're seeing more and more products enter the marketplace to fill the void that has been left by BL Heli 32. And whilst this isn't open source, and for some people that may be an issue, especially if you want to pair this with like the KISS Ultra, I think it's an absolute no-brainer. But don't think you can only use it with KISS Ultra. You can absolutely use it with any other flight controller via Betaflight. Just remember, though, to check your pinouts. Now, there will be links to these in the description. I want to say a huge thank you to the guys over there at sending these over to me. They're really interesting. I'm going to be doing a third video very soon, which is more around KISS Ultra, and then I'll be talking about how all of this flies together at the same time. I've discussed it a little bit in the frame review. I've talked about it a bit earlier as well, but if you're interested in seeing that, please do make sure you are subscribed. Again, link in the description. And finally, I just want to say, if you'd like to support the channel to allow us to keep making content in the future, please do consider checking out the link to my Patreon as well as buying me a coffee. It is only through the support of patrons I'm able to keep making content on this channel. And if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep making content in the future, please do consider checking it out. I want to say a huge thank you to all of my Patreons. We would not be able to keep doing this without your support. Anyway, that's it from me. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.